Kia ora, welcome back to Get Into Games. In this session, we're going to be talking about culture and game development. Now, here in New Zealand, we don't have many game developers, but we have really high quality. And I feel like that's a lot of New Zealand, right? We're a small country, but the content that comes out of New Zealand is just so incredible. So we are going to watch a video of 6 game developers that we have interviewed. We will ask them about their story, how they got into game design, and while you're watching, feel free to ask some questions in chat and we can address them because this is going to be a bit of a watch party, so we're going to watch it with you.
And of course, these questions are going to be based around their name, how they got into the industry, how long it took to make their first game, is it hard making games, and what you guys could study to get into games. So let's check out the first of these 6 interviews as we jump into it.
My name's Brogan, and I work at Rocketwerkz. I'm also working on my own game with under the company Mainframe Games. The game's Out of Sight, and I make games for a living.
Hello, I am Ludmila Miranda-Dukoski, or Miller for short, and I'm a video game programmer with a workshop Interactive. So I make games for a living.
My name is Roshan. I'm working for a company called Mad Carnival in Dunedin at the moment. I make games for a living.
Yeah, I'm Kamil Hepner. I'm a director of Teaate studio here in Wellington, and I do games for a living.
So, hi, I'm Zsombor. I'm originally from Hungary and moved here around 5 years ago, and I make games for a living.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Sam Ramlu, and I am managing director and co-founder of Method, Mad Carnival and Wanderer, and I make games for a living.
Probably quite an unorthodox way. I started off learning music actually, and I got into games programming during my masters in music. So basically I wanted to make the game to make the music, and then that just made me fall in love with programming and making games. So that's actually how it happened, yeah.
So I didn't study or intend to go into games originally. I went to university to be a psychologist, and I have a PhD in psychology. And one day I went to Melbourne to work for a tech startup, which ended up failing. And upon coming back to New Zealand, I was given the opportunity to either work as a video games producer at a small indie studio. I just decided to take a leap of faith and get started in video games development because I had been playing video games, since I was 6 or 7. And I haven't looked back since. It's been about coming up to 6 years now.
I'm into more art stuff.
I just want to bring up to the kids something very interesting. If you guys didn't notice from those last 2 speakers, one said they had a master's in music, and the other said they were a psychologist.
Yeah.
Which basically points out what we touched on earlier. Passion is the thing, right? Find that thing that you're going to latch onto, and just chase it with everything you've got. He finished a master's in music. A master's is a lot of work for them to suddenly then go, I'm going to use this to get into the games industry.
One thing that I noticed with it is just the diversity. So not just the people themselves, but also the skill sets, right? People come from all sorts of background, music, psychology, you were saying.
That's such a big piece to take away. So, don't worry about how it will get you into games. Just know that as long as you keep that passion going, whatever you end up doing can send you to the place you want to end up. So I really like that. And I just want to quickly point out the Sonic slander in the chat. Let's all agree Kahu's Sonic was much better than the one on the wall. So, but let's get back into it. Let's see what these devs have to say.
I'm really good in drawing, so I kind of more passion towards becoming a drawing teacher, first of all. And it's a completely different field. But then later I came to know about the video games. Even a kid can get into a video game industry by meeting other people back in my small town, and slowly I got into an engineering course where I get to learn programming. And over there I attended a lot of game jams and other meetups, so I get to meet even more people.
I started working in the VFX industry in film, basically working on lots of blockbuster movies, Avatar, Guardians of the Galaxy, and at some point I started really crave to do my own product, right? When you work in the movie industry, you're just part of a big machine, and working in games lets you to be part of a smaller team and working on your own product. So then I started, shifting more towards the games.
No, that's it's a really funny coincidence how I got into it. So I have a marketing background. I actually had a degree before I moved to New Zealand, and if I'm being very honest, I didn't like it. And my sister at the time was doing animation, and I always looked at her work and it's like, damn, this is really cool. And I was super jealous. And I remember when we moved here, she was going to study at media design school. I was actually already accepted to Massey to study standard software engineering. And the reason I got into MDS was I actually went with my sister to MDS because she was applying, and at the time we didn't know anyone here. So the best thing I could do is just go out. And I just remember walking in the door, and it's just this huge human-sized Assassin's Creed poster coming ahead, and it's like, okay, that's cool. And they happen to have a software engineering degrry, so yeah, sent my application, and it was
Pause
really
it
cool.
there, production. Because again, there we have it, folks. I want to point out all the pog snakes in the chat. Pogs for bacon, agreed. Both bacon and cheese are very good. But again, this dev started in marketing and hated it. And then they saw their sibling doing animation, and they got into it from there. So again, that says, what you may end up in might not be what you want to do. You can do it for a little while, something to sustain your life. But then he just ended up finding the thing he wanted to do, and chased it down thanks to his sister. So I really enjoyed that. What about you, Kahu?
I think a really interesting point is how he was talking about doing his own project. And I feel like if you are going to do your own project, that's a really good way to do it. Is you get your job, you get your full-time job, so you have that like stability, and you're learning through that, and then in your spare time start working on that game. So and you can use all the skills that you've learned through the job.
Passion is key. Let's get back into it with our devs.
That's how I got in.
We've been in the creative tech sector for 19 years this year, actually. So the first studio we opened, called Method, is very much a creative tech studio. We do a lot of work for clients. And so our first foray into kind of creating games was through that. And a lot of games that we created were essentially marketing or brand focused. So promotional games for clients, to play. And along the way, we did games across all sorts of digital platforms, including web, augmented reality, virtual reality, etc., etc. Some, physical space games, so using the Kinect as well, doing some of those things.
Well, I work on stationaires at Rocketwerkz, so I'm contracted with Rocketwerkz to work on that. So that's my 8-hour day, if you will, working with them. But I'm also working on my own game with a friend who's sort of trying to get into the industry as well. He's the artist and I'm the programmer. And I probably work on that, give or take, sort of 2 to 4 hours a week, a day, depending on how tired I am, because it's quite exhausting. Yeah, but the end goal is to establish our own studio and kind of be our own bosses and stuff like that. So the drive is high.
I can't really say too much about it because it's heavily NDA. But we are working on an intellectual property that Weta Workshop has kind of been involved in for a significant period of time. So it's really great to be in a position to develop more content for this intellectual property in a completely different medium to what Weta Workshop has done in the past.
As I said, I'm currently working for Mad Carnival.
I picked up on something very interesting back there with our first dev. Is I like the idea they built on was, their passion was leading them to do these, their 8-hour job, which we spoke of. You need to have that thing that gives you your lifestyle. But then they were also doing a lot of work on their own passion project. What that says to me is, yes, use the passion to drive all that work you're going to do, but also you need to be very mindful of your own lifestyle, and you need to have a really good lifestyle balance between those two things. Because what can happen, and we do see it happen a lot with adults these days, is burnout. You will burn yourself out. Even if you have the passion, it's not healthy to constantly burn yourself out because you're chasing the thing you love. So just really make sure that you're mindful of your own health, your own lifestyle when you're doing all these things. Because yes, it can feel worth it in the long run. But if you don't have the energy to really enjoy the moment, then it may mean that you end up missing it once you actually get to the end there.
I mean, you probably end up further moving in little increments than going too hard, too fast, and then just crashing and losing your motivation. So
Exactly. Yeah. Don't act like your life is built on energy drinks. So, it's
or
not-
coffee.
Or coffee.
Or
Yeah,
coffee.
we both had one of those this morning, so that's all right. Thank you, production. If you could start it back up.
A gaming company, so we are working with some multinational brands. Like, I mean, I'm still, like, I'm not supposed to be like sharing any info on that. Yes, because it's not yet released, and like nothing is announced officially. So I better not talk about it. Sorry.
We're currently working on our action RPG game set in a Japanese fantasy world, I can say. So it's imagine Ghibli movies, right? How cool will it be to be in this type of worlds where it's like full of magic and fantasy, and you take a role of Yuki, who's a guardian of Tengoku Flame, and he has lots of magic, lots of powers, and we love Japanese culture as everybody working on our game, and that's where it started. Yeah.
So currently, we are developing a game called Criminals Within, which is a medieval fantasy action game, which revolves around two characters: Helena, who is a royal guard, very powerful, think of Brienne of Tarth, and Gerald, who is a shrewd thief, kind of like Jack Sparrow, Flynn Rider combination, and they have to work together in this game. So they are forced to work together at the beginning of the game, and the whole game revolves around them cooperating and working together in order to beat enemies. And that's the game we're working on right now. It's very early stage in terms of development, but yeah.
Yeah, so I've got 3 studios. So Method very much still operates in the creative tech sector, where we do client work. We do a lot of casual games still. We launched one early in the year for KFC, which is like a cricket game. So a lot of those sort of things, which are really brand related.
I get up at 6 and sort of work on my own stuff at that time, mainly because later on the day I'm too tired from the day's work. But then I work from 8 till 9:30 to 5:30. Sort of. It's pretty flexible. I've found actually both the companies I've worked for.
It really depends on the kind of policies that a studio has in place. But at Weta Workshop, we embrace flexible work arrangements. So for the most part, I try to keep my day as 9 to 5 to fit in with most people's schedules. But because I have a small human now, sometimes that is not possible because I'm either taking her to an appointment or whatever. But I still work 8 hours a day, like most people do.
But if you're speaking about the contract, yeah, like my working hours are from 8:30 to 5:30. Like a normal office hours, but in my company, it's really flexible. It's just as long as the work is done, it doesn't matter. Like you don't have to sit like in front of your computer from this time to that. Even like you don't have anything to do. It's nothing like that.
That's a tricky question. Since I'm also a game designer and the director of a studio, I sometimes tend to work long hours. Since we have a very, how to say it, not very strict hours of work, We sometimes have a break in the middle of the day, so that's what I love about our company. Is like we work from home, so you can work in the morning, have a big break in the middle of the day, work in the evening. But we usually work around 45 hours a week.
So for us, it depends studio by studio, but for us, we are fully remote and we are fully flexible in terms of working hours. So we have a base time when we should be available for discussions, which is between 10 and 3. So that's like a 5-hour period. But outside of that, I could be working in the morning from 6 to 10 if I wanted to, or later. I had a time period just in a couple of months. I woke up at 10 a.m. and just worked my 8 hours then. But we do not really have a limit of. It's not really for us. It's not a 9 to 5 thing because no one is efficient and productive 8 hours a day straight.
Oh, I don't know if you guys want to know the question to this, but remember, I'm an owner. I have been for a very long time. So my hours are pretty much, I kind of don't stop working, really. And, you know, I've always got my phone on me. I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I'm not ashamed to say that because I actually a workaholic sounds really bad, but actually, like, I enjoy what I do. If I'm stuck in doing a game design, I was actually working half the weekend, but I really wanted to do this, you know, work. So, I also have a son, so, you know, after I've dropped him off to school is when my day really starts, but I'm in there checking emails before that. I work quite late, you know, depending on what it is that I'm working on. If I'm kind of in the middle of something, I don't want to break my flow. So look, it's so varied, but we make a real point with our teams, you know, and it's a bit harder with certain teams, but definitely try and instill this idea that work fits best when you work best, you know. So
we did the Kiwi Game Jam, me and my friend who are still making games now. So technically that would be first game, so that was 48 hours to make that. But, you know, it's just like a real basic jumping game. So yeah, 48 hours I'd say technically.
So I had a few different experiences throughout my career. So my first game that I worked on was called Etherlight for the small indie game studio that I was mentioning earlier. It's now defunct, but it was called Scarlet City Studios. So the game doesn't exist anymore. And then I ended up working in agency for a long time, which essentially means that you're working for clients on client projects. And I did a lot of projects for the government, actually. So I did a lot of game development for particularly the Ministry of Social Development and Education New Zealand as well.
My very first game, like a proper game, I would say, is just the one which I did during my university. And it took me almost a semester, which is 6 months. But because it was a VR game, like I had to do a lot of learning, and it just takes a lot of time. Yeah.
That's our first game which we are making currently, and I started working on this game by myself. It started 2 years ago. It was a very slow process because I still had a job that time working in the VFX industry, and now we're aiming to release our game in a year from now on. So it can take, I think in total will be 2.5 years. Current project?
Well, we released small games individually. I personally haven't released a commercial game before. That is because we literally started the studio out of university. We did work on commercial projects, so that is there, but a lot of games do not get released, even though you spent time working on it. So that's just the reality. I don't know the exact stats, but what I read a couple of weeks ago was 1 out of 3 games actually get released. Don't quote me on that. So I just remember reading about this.
Well, so it really depends what you mean by first game, but if we took Wanderer as the kind of big, you know, original IP game that's been released on a like actually shipped, that one, well, look, it took better part of 3 years, 2.5, almost 3 years. And before that, probably another 2.5 years of funding. So, and in that time we'd create a demo. But if you went kind of end to end, I'd say 2.5 years for Wanderer. Yeah.
Yes. Yes and no. Like, okay, yeah, it depends on the complexity, but I would say yes, it is pretty hard to make a commercial game.
Yes and no. If it really depends what you want to do. So for the most part, if you're not an experienced game developer, you can get a lot of help from the community.
Initially, yes, but once you get a hang of it, then you'll know what to do. And there are tons of resources online, and there's a lot of there's a good gaming community in New Zealand.
Wow, this is a good question. It is hard. It is hard making games, but it's so much fun.
Oh yeah, it's very difficult. It's very fun, but it's very difficult.
Yes. And I think hard doesn't necessarily mean it's not enjoyable though. So personally, I really enjoy a challenge. I think if something was too easy, I'd probably stop doing it pretty quickly. My interest would only stay so far.
Anything programming, obviously, but that's just one avenue of game development. Like, you can be a graphic designer, a game designer, which sometimes they generally are programmers, but they just study more systems and how they correlate to other systems and how to get the game going. There's also storytelling. So, but I would say IT and programming and stuff would be the best place to be.
Well, it really depends what you want to do. If you want to be a programmer, picking up those infosys papers would be really, really great. If you want to be an artist, it really depends what kind of type of art you want to do. If you just want to do concept art or more 2D art, then your standard art papers classes would be just fine.
If you're passionate, just follow your dreams, I would say. Just keep doing it. Do what you like. One day you will realize, oh, I know a lot of stuff now where I can just make my own game right now.
It depends on what you would like to do, right? There's so many different roles when you're working on a game. Some people feel very strong about storytelling, right? So I would say writing, basically more of a design side, art as well at the same time. Some people are really passionate about the technical side of the games, which is computer graphics, programming, and they love, tinkering with the computers. Lots of kids are great modders as well. They like to mod the games. So I would say there isn't really strict answer for that. I would say learn as much as you can of everything.
Math, especially if you're looking at doing anything like coding, which is a good thing. I highly recommend it. Then maths. For example, vector maths is the one that I use the most because it's just figuring out which directions your enemy should be facing and how you want the AI to navigate. Those kind of stuff are really cool.
I think there's a few different things. One is that there might be an initial thought that you just love playing games, and this is a space that you could actually have a career in. But I think about a lot of people go, I want to go into games, but what is it that you want to do? So figure out what the function is, what the job role is that you want to have.
And there you guys have it. That's some amazing insight from developers out there in our industry right now. And I really like, Kahu, that they keep coming around to, kind of reinforcing the ideas around passion and how much work that makes them do. But to also have that healthy balance, ensuring that your lifestyle matches your passion, that you're not burning yourself out. Now, I noticed you writing down a lot of notes, and I'm very interested in what those are. What have you got for us?
So I'll just remind you guys that I'm doing a Masters of Business Management, so I've kind of got that business mind. But one thing that I found quite interesting watching that is, it's making a game is one thing, but then being able to sell it is a whole nother thing, and having an idea of what your target market is, is the game that you're making is that even what people want to play? So I feel like if you do get into game development, because a lot of them were making their own games, and that's what made me think about this, If you do, then you kind of do need to have like the understanding of the market. And perhaps you don't have to have that yourself, you can outsource that. You can hire somebody who has that knowledge. But another big thing that I realized is that there's actually different types of games. So there's value games and volume games. So the value games are the ones where you get a lot of value for your money. So they're the games that are usually on console. They're the ones that you like buy up front. So the discs that you buy from the warehouse, they're complex and they're games where you can spend many hours on. So these are value games. Examples are The Witcher, Last of Us, BioShock, like long story games. The other one is volume, and these are more like mobile games. These are the really like simple ones that might have microtransactions, and you kind of play them in small bursts as opposed to sitting down and spending 8 hours on it. An example being Candy Crush, Subway Surfers, and Fruit Ninja. So I think that is something that we need to keep in mind, is that there are different types of games, and the mobile ones and the simple ones, they're relatively easy. Like that's where you probably want to start if you're going to start making games. Like jumping straight, yes, an Angry Bird, like jumping straight into like a full-on big story game. So if you guys are considering starting games, I would just recommend maybe looking at just a nice simple mobile game.
Yeah, and I don't think many people realize, like, even though it's actually a perfect example of passion versus burnout. The creator of Flappy Bird earned a ton of money. Like, I don't think people realize how much money Flappy Bird make. But because of that popularity, it kind of transitioned the game between value versus volume. So it became this game that people were playing for value, that then very quickly rushed into volume, and then it just burnt the creator out. And that is why Flappy Bird basically doesn't exist anymore.
When he pulled Flappy Bird, they were selling the iPhones that still had it for like $5,000.
Exactly. That's how popular Flappy Bird was. So it's this kind of interesting ground between those kind of two different ways that we can sell through games and how you could consider to sell through games. But on that note, it is going to be day 2 of the Empower West Coast tour that we started with yesterday, and this time it saw the team set up shop at the Epic Digital Hub in Westport. Let's have a look.
That is so cool. It's so good that students have access to that level of computer, because I remember when I was at school, we had really old, bulky computers that were just like as soon as you start them up, and they were so slow. So
run Overwatch on it like they were running Overwatch. So, but that was that whole setting was impressive.
It was
hiding away in Westport, and it looks like. All that I can tell you that we're there on the day. We're having a really good time, so that's really cool. I just want to notice in the chat, yes, they had the Oculus, and yes, it did look like Warhammer 40k. People on the Oculus might have been playing Beat Saber. I'm not too sure. What are our Zeno and Kahu's peripherals? We've got Razer, we've got Logitech. We've basically got all we need to answer that we can keep presenting the stream to you guys. Kia ora to Charlotte in the chat. How are you going? And what do you use, a laptop or something? I think that was for Zeno Access there.
The level of computing that computers can do these days is you can get more for less. Like the pretty lower end laptops can run decent games now.
Yeah, I'm very lucky because I've just rebuilt my PC at home, and I have My Hero Academia All Might case on it. So, because I can do that. So yeah, so I just haven't configured the startup sound to be like All Might, just screaming at me
And
as I
remember,
boot up the
if
computer.
if you guys are saving up or you can't
Mhm.
quite get your hands on your own PC, remember there's internet cafes and they're really cheap. It's like, a couple dollars for a few hours.
There
So
might be Digital Natives Academy, which you could check out in Rotorua if you wanted to.
nice plug.
Yeah, there you go. But there has been our 11 a.m. slot. We will be back at 12 p.m. With character design, and I believe we have another interview for that. So I am looking forward to that. Until then, we will see you guys at 12 o'clock. Ka kite.